Final Fantasy and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are two series that aren't usually discussed together, even if they do share some common elements, like the mutual attraction to fashion for their character designs. What I wanted to talk about today, though, is how specifically the fifth part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Vento Aureo, might have influenced elements of the story and themes of the seventh title of the Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy VII. Going with the basic stuff, we have two blonde protagonists who join a criminal group, are extremely passive-aggressive, and in the story there's also a tall silver-haired man who used to be in the military and wears a
Gucci dress.
Both get stabbed in the back. The two stories revolve around the protagonists that have an HQ in a bar or a restaurant and go against a system. Both stories contain various scenes of set pieces on vehicles, evil doctors that are allowed to do whatever they want thanks to their organization, characters returning in wheelchairs, and other common elements. But one of the most relevant for comparison is the Deposition of Christ, which, if you've seen my Vento Aureo videos, is kind of omnipresent in the part, as it's used as a shorthand for personal sacrifice of basically all characters, except for Bruno and Giorno, who instead often assume Virgin Mary poses and iconography. On another hand, in Final Fantasy VII, it's present in the scene where Aerith dies, as she is being a Jesus analogy, sacrificing herself to activate the life materia. And interestingly, Cloud here assumes the role of Mary, but more interestingly, Sephiroth enacts both the roles of the Lance of Destiny, known as Longinus, which is the lance that finished off Jesus, and the Cross, which he literally assumes the pose of here, when in his T-pose. In a sense, Sephiroth here acts as a sort of enactor of fate, which we will come back to later. In Vento Aureo, there are many characters with deceased or absent mother figures, like Giorno, Trish, Narancia, Bruno, or even Diavolo. Final Fantasy has the same thing with Cloud, Sephiroth, and his two mother figures, Marlene, Aerith, Tifa, a lot. And it even extends to other Final Fantasies, having Edea in the 8th,
All of those mother things in 9.
Tidus Mother in 10. And an interesting thing that happens in both Final Fantasy VII and Vento Aureo is that they both received some sort of reinterpretation recently, in the form of a remake and an animation. The Vento Aureo animated series is fine. It's basically the same thing, it has some minor issues, but does what it should. The Final Fantasy VII remake, on the other hand, is a very different discussion, as it works as a sort of different timeline retelling where some characters know what's up, almost like the play by Luigi Pirandello, Sei personaggi in cerca di autore. And more importantly, to our main topic, it has a bigger emphasis on fate. So yeah, Vento Aureo and Final Fantasy VII talk about a lot about fate, but how so? In Vento Aureo, the topic takes the main stage during the Sleeping Slaves arc, where the stand Rolling Stones, which has the same kanji of a cross slash by the way, acts as a physical representation of fate, literally setting into stone the fates of a group of characters that will die with various degrees of Jesus. Final Fantasy VII Remake does a different thing. As I've talked about in my last video explaining the theatrical inspiration of Final Fantasy, the remake is doubling down on this theater thing, as it's doing one of those new age reinterpretation of a classic play, where they don't do the straight retelling while focusing on certain aspects, done by changing around some stuff and even breaking the fourth wall, which kind of happened in the original game too. In the game there are also these Deus Ex Machina ghosts that act as a sort of representation of the will to follow the original script, acting as a stagehand, which is also what Jesse does in theater, to make events happen as they should and the like. So all of this to bring us back to the Deposition of Christ, and the set in stone roles of Cloud, Sephiroth and Aerith. Sephiroth and Aerith know for different reasons what these course of events will be, and while Aerith is trying to be a Jesus allegory about it, even though she has doubts about it, Sephiroth on the other hand is being all and starts to meddle in the timelines. What happens now, I don't know, I hope it's good, but I don't care. So that's kind of it. these are the things I wanted to add to the discussion. Hope you liked it. And before leaving you, check this out. This shape in the sky. What do you think it is? Is it the thing? All right, bye.